Hey everybody, welcome back to the next episode of the Legacy Liftoff podcast by Dronadair. I'm your host, Cody Retlick, and today with me is Marvin Rosario of AirWeb Digital. Marvin, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate your time, Cody, and look forward to nerding out and talk about drones and tech.
Hey, one of the two greatest things right there, right, is drones and
For
tech
sure.
and nerding out about it. So, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm really happy that you're with me today. I feel like in a lot of ways, our stories of kind of like those aha moments or what we first started to build are very similar. So, I love obviously sharing people's stories, and I've been connected with you for a little while now, and been able to meet with you in some capacities. So I'm happy to hear more about kind of how you began and what you're working on and really tell your story. And that's where I like to start is like the beginning of, we can go back before drones were even a thing or technology, your love for tech. And I know you kind of began in that digital space with like website design and doing a lot of that stuff. But I don't want to tell your story and I don't want to share too much of it because I want you to share it. But can you kind of take us back to the beginning moments of like what you were working on or how you really started in the drone industry and kind of give us that origin story of how you got into it?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. First off, I want to say I appreciate the platform that you're building and the ability to share stories. And that's how people learn, storytelling and being able to learn from somebody else who's gone through the experiences that we've gone through. You can save so much time and just shorten out that time of success and whatever you're looking for. So if you want to go deep into technology as a whole, I've been in love with technology since the beginning, of my childhood. Whenever I was younger, to give you context, I'm first generation American. So in the household that I grew up in, I would go to school and speak English all day, but I would come home and speak Spanish all day. So there's this gap of language. And then as I got older, I would always fidget around with toys and gadgets and things like that. So then my family would be like, hey, can you fix this tech problem? Like we can't get the TV, connected right, or the Wi-Fi's down. So I was always like tinkering that and having to communicate that between English and Spanish. I knew it from the English sense and I would talk to my friends about things and then I would communicate it to my grandparents, and that's really where I started helping people with technology. That's a good point where I can look back and say, wow, looking back, I wouldn't have thought about it, but I was a technology consultant, just helping out around the house with different IT problems. And then fast forward to college, took a intro to HTML class and really liked it. I liked the building part of it. I didn't like the code part of it. I used to fix iPhones and like repair iPhones in like high school. So I really liked iPhones and that whole ecosystem, and I wanted to build for the iPhone. So I like the sense of like, oh, I'm learning HTML. I could build a website. Anybody can access that. But it was really hard to learn. So then found an internship at a marketing agency and started building websites and learned through building. After that internship, started working full time and started leading the actual web team with marketing department and website department. And at that time, I was building websites and pulling stock imagery from like Shutterstock, and building this website, getting a nice Atlanta backdrop. I'm like, man, there's some drone photos in here. And I've never seen aerial photography in this sense. And then I go home and, I drive back up to my parents one day. I lived in, an hour away and I'm driving back and my dad's flying this drone as I pull into the driveway. And I'm like, what is he doing? And it kind of clicked. I was like, wait, it's like, I've seen this thing before, but my dad's flying one of these. I never thought that you could actually purchase these things. And he actually got it from the hobby store. It was like a $20, $30 drone. So we had so much fun with it, flew for hours, crashed a couple of them. And it really got my spark of like, wow, this is a really fun thing to fly. A few days after that, I'm like online doing some research and I come across something for Hurricane Maria. And in Hurricane Maria, I'm half Puerto Rican, half Mexican. So Puerto Rico got hit with a hurricane and AT&T had sent these drones and they had this Cell on Wings program where they would fly over areas and, improve the telecommunication in that area. And I was like, wow, there's such a big industry into drones. It's much bigger than what we're doing just flying around in the front yard. Like AT&T's doing this at this super high level. So, long story short, got my part 107. A few months after that, I started flying the drone some more and getting my experience up, posting online, got my website built myself. And that's why I learned at the agency before. And that's where AirWeb started, as a solo drone operator, and getting my portfolio out there and getting work that whenever the content would come in, I would edit it with my photo and editing skills, super basic. But, when you got Adobe Creative Cloud, you can do a lot. From that point on, it's turned into what it is now. And we have 3,000 drone pilots across a global network. And we work in a different sense of more of like a consulting firm, where we'll take in the problems that our clients are experiencing and we'll use the tools and the tech to be able to solve that problem. But it's a pretty big journey from starting off as solo drone pilot to what it is now.
Yeah, and you obviously there's a lot in between there, right? Of like how you were able to learn and understand yourself, how you can one start a business because you had not started a business before, right? That was your first true business, correct? Right? You were working for someone else before that?
Right, right. Just entrepreneurial, fixing iPhones and flipping and selling iPhones and then building websites for people. But this was my first real business. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and one to start a new business in an industry where, at the time was relatively new too in a lot of ways, but
Mhm.
uh it's cool because I think, like I said before, there is a lot of similarities like between ourselves of, hey, starting in the beginning, I know how hard it is to just one find a niche, but also like figure out the tech and figure out like who is a client for this type of stuff and what type of
Yeah.
service offerings are you going to be able to provide and in what areas and what industries and then be able to sell into it as well. But before we kind of get into a lot of that, what so when you first started, were you always AirWeb Digital right off the bat? Was that the name from the beginning?
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
So in 2019, the end of 2019, I think it was like the last quarter of it. That's when I got my 107, and I was just posting through my personal pages. But in January of 2020, so I was building the website at the end of 2019, launched it January 1st, 2020. Wanted to make it easy on my books, so that's when I got the LLC. That's when I got everything, and it was all airwebdigital.com.
The name makes sense, right? I mean, you're combining what your new passion, your newfound love for the technology of drones right in the air with your web and design and digital stuff. So I think it's a great name for what you have created today and also where you kind of started. And that's what when I was looking a little bit more into it too, it's like, well, you combined both of what you were doing in a cool way to form a name, which names are hard, man. I mean, nowadays it's like everything's taken or whatever, so it's good to, hear that a little bit too. But so what were you flying? But what was like your first commercial drone that you purchased that you started doing client work for?
I wouldn't say it's commercial drone, but to give you context, I wasn't one of the people that could just study online and learn my 107 and things like that. Like I dropped out of college, and so I wasn't the lecture type. I was very hands on, and big classrooms. It makes it tough to be able to learn, for me at least, right? So I found a grant program that actually paid for my tuition to be able to. Oh, my bad. You're saying something that cut off.
Oh, you're good.
Okay, got you.
Yep.
So I found a grant program in the state of Georgia. It's through WorkSource Georgia, and for people that had qualified for an income threshold, then you could get your full tuition paid for any kind of education, training, certification course. And the 107 was a course under that. So after I went through that program, they bought me my first drone with HD quality, video quality. Because before that, I was just flying 30, 40, $50 drones off of Amazon and just getting in the field of sticks and flying around trees and just trying to get really cinematic flights, right? I couldn't really see what I was flying,
Mhm.
but at least just flying line of sight. And then they got me my first drone, which was the DJI Spark. So that was what was getting me a post online. I was taking really nice photos of it, editing it in Lightroom, editing in Premiere Pro, and at least getting some kind of work out there to get me my first commercial job, which was with a commercial real estate brokerage that I ended up working with for 2 years. And those jobs, after the first year, we ended up doing jobs in other states for them through my network. So it turned into an opportunity that expanded beyond just me as the only person capturing for them, but more other people in other states. And still being able to get that fast turnaround without me having to travel to that location.
Yeah, I think that's very similar in a lot of ways because it's one, you got the client, and then that developed into more, right? Because it is something that cost wise, it's tough to be like, yeah, I can travel to all these, but it's going to be these travel expenses, or you can't even travel there because it just doesn't make sense from a budget standpoint.
Hmm.
I would like to talk a little bit about. I want to dive into that a little bit more, but before that, what?
Hmm.
How did you land that first client? Because some of the listeners might be just
Yeah.
starting a business, they might be starting to grow a business, trying to get more clients, and trying to understand how they can really, sell themselves. Um, real estate is one thing, right? We all know that's one of the first kind of real used industries that adopted drone technologies earlier on. Um, so I'm curious, how did you land that first real estate brokerage client?
So we can work backwards from it because I had to have the website first to be able to
Mm,
have to land this job. So had the website built, and what I started doing is going onto LoopNet, because you're right, real estate is something that a lot of people, they know about it, and it's one of the easiest or lowest entry barriers, you could say, for our kind of work, capturing media and marketing content or even survey content. So for that, you got to go to commercial real estate because they have more deeper pockets. If they have $1 million plus property, then they can justify a couple $100, closer to $1,000 for marketing content, and even more at times. It just depends on who you're talking with, and you never want to quote somebody based on your pockets. You want to work off of their pockets. So understand their problems, understand their needs, understand their purchasing history and what they're looking to do with the content, because it all comes down to the end use and the value that they get off of it. So if you can make them $50,000 in profit, then try to negotiate a tenth of that as your cost. So if you can 10x based on what you're delivering, then reach for 5,000. The worst that they could say is no, but of course that's different than commercial marketing, commercial real estate and things like that. So I started off going to LoopNet, and LoopNet's great because, I could get in trouble for saying this, but they put out contact info. And for some of the agents and brokers that you're calling, you never want to call and waste their time, because they're thinking that they're getting a call for somebody interested in their property. So out of the gate, I would just tell them why I'm calling. And it was a straight up cold call, letting them know that I'm a certified drone pilot in the area and can capture aerial and ground content for them. And whether that is in the form of photos or videos, we can do it all. We edit it and it's ready to post. And that's a big key, because they don't want to fidget with marketing and touching up, highlights and shadows on the post. So they just want something that's ready to post. So that first job came from, I would say, more than 20 to 30 cold calls. But after that set, I had left a voicemail to one of these agents. And in that voicemail, gave them the value proposition, and I told them my website, airwebdigital.com. You can look at our work. And then the agent forwarded that voicemail to his marketing director that lived in Poland. So this agent's in Atlanta. I lived in Gainesville, Georgia at the time. He forwards it over to his marketing guy in Poland. That guy in Poland looks at the website, can vouch my work, can vet my work instantly, gives me a call back, says, "Hey, are you available tomorrow to capture a property in Alabama?" And at that time, I didn't really know much about my worth for this kind of work. I was honestly time quoting rather than value quoting.
Yep.
So for this one, I said, okay, I could do it for $800. And I looked at it as I could drive over there, drive back, I could drive over there, capture the content, edit it at a Starbucks, drive back, and I'd be back at home that same day, work 8 hours in the day, and make $100 an hour. And he said,
Right.
yeah. He said yes instantly, which I knew next time I need to quote higher. That was way too fast for him to say yes. So,
Yep. You
so
never want him to be like, "Yep, absolutely, let's do it, sign now," right?
yeah,
It's like, "Oh, no, actually, did I say 800?"
yeah. Did I say? Let me add a zero, and then we can work down from
Yeah,
there.
yeah, no, I meant 1,800, there's a 1 in front
Right,
of that?
right. There's a typo. So
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
mean that was my first job, but it was all because I was findable, right? Like, yeah, I could have left the voicemail, said, "Yeah, I'm a drone pilot," blah blah blah, and he could call me back, and then I could send him my work. But I had my website there. He could look at it, he could read it, he could see the work, instant. Yes, this guy's good for the job. Can you do it
yep,
tomorrow? And that's how it needs to be. You need to be findable first, and then you
Yeah.
reach out, and then they can actually vet the work, and that makes it so much easier on your end, their end. It's a seamless process.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's a great lesson too, because like we were talking about it before the podcast started. We were talking about trading services a little bit, and I think that's something that I do a lot is like when I'm looking to travel or do something, it's like I always DM people from my Instagram, right? Because it's like they
Yeah.
see everything right there. They see all the beautiful pictures or the videos or whatever. And it's like immediately they know that you're not some random person that just started, maybe, maybe not. And even if you are, at least have some of your work available somewhere, right? You're either
Right.
sending them to a link or a landing page or a website if you have one, wherever it is, to immediately give you credibility that, okay,
Mhm.
yeah, this is great quality or this is exactly what I'm looking for. Maybe it's not, but at least they know now what kind of services you have. So,
Great
when you
point.
after you so you did that first job, kind of got your first taste. Maybe you underquoted it, maybe not though, because at the end of the day, I mean, still $800 for a job. Yes, you had to travel. It's still a great hourly rate for that, right? And really, your first one. So it's like that's great first one in a lot of ways. That ultimately, you didn't know it was going to lead to more. But how
Mm.
then? So did you just keep building up that relationship, and then at what point? Because I know for me, it was a very clear distinction of like, hey, now it's time to find other pilots, help them out. They can get some work. Obviously, yes, we're taking some margin, but we're also giving them the work and providing them that, and being that whole entire process from beginning to end. What did you kind of like? How did it transition from that first job to be like, all right, now we got to start building a network and start working with other drone pilots?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great intuition that you had to be able to see that so quickly, because it took me a while. It was January 2020 that I had started really pushing out airwebdigital.com. And it took me until 2021, about, I would say, half of the year in, or a little bit further than half the year in, I was in a Facebook group and came across somebody posting out telecom work. And I was like, telecom work? I've seen this before. I've seen telecom work in Puerto Rico, but they're sending drones, for sending, telecom and improving the signal and things like that. So I was like, what is this about? And found out that it was for inspections, pre and post 5G additions to the cell phone towers. A drone would be flown around, capture imagery, and that imagery would then process for photogrammetry. And they'd have a 3D model for the engineering team to be able to remotely inspect it from home. So that was like, whoa! I didn't know that there was this whole workflow of flying around a tower and being able to do that. So I jumped into that opportunity, still a solo drone pilot, and I did 185 towers in like 5 weeks, went to like four different states, only had one tower denied. Like I had flawless capture methods. And it was really awesome, except for one thing, is that I was away from friends and family. And that's like the worst thing. I mean, I had a long relationship with my girlfriend at the time, which I wanted to get married to. And I'm like, I'm on the road all the time. And it's great to be able to make money like this. But also, I'm one of many. There was a
Yeah.
team of maybe five guys within my group, which I only knew of. That could have been a smaller branch within the organization we were working under. Other organizations are on the same contract as subcontractors. So there's probably 50 to 100 guys across the nation doing the same kind of work. So it really excited me. I mean, I was like, man, there's opportunity here to be able to be a prime contractor and do this kind of work. And from that point on, I started really thinking about a network and how can I trade, time, not have to only leverage my time, but expand my time and work with others and be able to make a relationship to where they're only worrying about capturing, which is what they want to do. And I can worry about everything else, the marketing of
Yep.
the content of the client, trying to close the client, trying to do all the follow ups, get payment from the client, do the QC on the data, edit their data, send it over to the client, get their feedback, fix it if they have to, send it. Like the pilot is just worrying about flying. And for people that want to do that, that's an amazing career. And from that point on, I was like, okay, I got to think differently of how I can create a network. And I was really worried about the quality I didn't want to make it a brokerage kind of feel where the client has direct communication with the pilot, because then some pilots can only capture, some can capture and edit. The client just wants the data at the end of the day. They just want whatever they need, right? And they don't want to have to worry about getting that final product in multiple steps. So we've eliminated all of that, and we just started marketing out that we can do anything anywhere that we have the pilots at, and then we'll focus on all the back end and creating that final deliverable that the client actually wants, because they don't want to have to fidget with scheduling and capturing content and then having to process that content into their final use case.
Yeah, and that's a big time thing because there's so many different processes. I mean, telecom is one thing, right?
Yeah,
Did a lot of towers as well throughout the area and other areas as well with other pilots because it's a whole different process. Um, Accessing towers, getting to them, having the vehicles that they need to get to some of these towers. I mean,
yeah.
we could have we did have an episode with Andy Trench on from Vertspec here a few weeks back, well, a few months ago back now, a couple months back, excuse me.
Hmm.
Just a very, very specific to tower and telecom because it's a huge industry for drones, but um, it is one that is a grind as well, and you need to be able to kind of be on top of everything consistently, right? But knowing that you kind of then were starting to transition, and it's like, okay, we got this tower job now, or this tower gigs where we're going to start transitioning more into being able that consultancy agency, right? Of like, being there for your clients, but letting pilots just get back to flying because I think that's what most people want to do, right? It's like dealing with all the business stuff. The We were just talking about taxes right before this as well. It's like you still have to do your taxes, but like in
Yeah.
order to do all of the other stuff of closing deals and signing contracts and payments and everything, it's a lot, right? And not everybody wants to do it. So I think that's one way that the industry has changed too, right? We have a lot of different pilots that it's like side hustles and they just want to pick up jobs here and there, or they want to pick up like a month contract here and do a different job there. So a lot of pilots out there. How did you go about starting to then build that network? Were you just searching on Google and like trying to vet people or Instagram? I know there's some other resources out there that obviously give you access to other pilots and whatnot, but like
Mhm.
what kind of was like your vetting process, or just you just having conversations with people and then figuring out what they were good at, or
Mhm.
understanding kind of their areas of expertise? Because I know
Yeah.
for me that was the biggest thing is like we're not me and you I think are very similar in the way that it's like we're not one of those other marketplaces out there that it's like, hey, click accept first, or submit the lowest bid
Right.
and you get this job, right? It's like, no, we want to find the right pilots for the client specific needs, and knowing that they're going to get the job done right the first time is the most critical part, right? And then everybody is happy. So can you talk a little bit of kind of your process of like when you go to vet pilots, or you're looking to add new pilots to your network, kind of what you're looking at, or what you're talking about with pilots?
Yeah, for sure. In the beginning, I mean, it was very sloppy. It was, I didn't have any systems set up. I was really working off of my tight knit network, but I didn't have a database per se that I could access and really be able to leverage my network. Because by sloppy, I don't mean that we were just bringing anybody in. It was like operationally wise, like on the back end,
Yeah.
and actually being able to complete the job. Because a client would be like, "Hey, I need X pilot in X location," and then I'd be like, "Okay, I have a group of 20 to 30 guys. I could think about who's where and who's the closest to this one and who's that." Like, it was just in my head, and then I would, even if I put it in a spreadsheet, I was like, how do I find the closest person to the job? Like, it was like I
Mhm.
was trying to create my own network because I didn't just want to leverage other networks. I wanted to own the data, and I wanted to be able to ask specific questions and have a really good system set up for it. So in the beginning, it was just working off of my personal network. And then I started looking into, different kind of ways of doing it with free software, not having to build a, robust platform for it, but it was more so, what can I use with the software that's already out? So I found a really cool way with Google, that you can create a form and ask all your questions, but you can take that CSV data and throw it into my maps and have it in a geospatial form. And I can now drill into the zip code of the client's project, zoom out, and I have everybody around that project to be able to then contact and vet out. And the way that we vet out is not typical to most networks. I mean, I believe that even if you just started today, you could be way better than somebody who started 10 years ago. And
Mm-hmm.
somebody who started 10 years ago might have that drone collecting dust in the closet. I've been flying drones for, well, 5 years now, but my drones are in the closet collecting dust because I don't fly. I hire other people to fly. So just because somebody has experience does not mean anything. I've seen people who've picked up a drone that have been flying for hours as a better pilot than somebody who's been flying for years. So personally, we accept everybody, quote unquote, into our network, but clients are not getting access to that. So it's not like clients are working with first time flyers. And we vet out people based on a per job basis. So when you have your equipment set up, when you have your portfolio set up, we can see that. We vet that out before sending you a job. And then whenever we send out the alert, people that are already in our network are applying for that. But then we post it out to social platforms and our email list and a few other partner networks that we work with. And that gets more people to apply. So now we have this project form, let's call it a project form, that's got 10 new pilots under it. And 2 of them have already been in our network, but 8 of them are new. And we take that information, we put that into our bigger database, and now we can pull in and be able to vet out more people and find the right person for the job. Because even if you started today, I believe that you have the potential to be an amazing pilot. For example, if it wasn't for Kyle and you, shout out to Kyle and you and the stuff that he's doing now with all of his educational programs and everything. But he trusted me for the telecom work, and I had no experience in flying cell towers, but he saw my work in flying this kind of cinematic, more FPV style, and was like, hey, you're really good on the sticks. I think you can fly around a tower because it's a 50-50 flight. Part of it's automated, part of it's manual. But if you're good on the sticks, then you have that confidence to fly around this really expensive asset with vegetation around, right? So it was his trust in me to be able to train me up and to be able to go out and do that work, that I had that confidence to go out and fly 185 towers, and only one of them got denied. Whereas other guys have been flying for years and they're like, I can't figure it out, I can't get it, but they're maybe working off of old habits, or maybe the work ethic's not there. There could be a bunch of different reasons. So I don't like to discount anybody out if they don't have that experience. But when it comes to work, it comes down to your work. And if somebody doesn't fly good for us, I mean, I put my character on the line with the clients to say, we're going to do the job right no matter what it takes. We take on that responsibility and that liability. So if it's not done right, then it gets reflown. And we try to minimize that with our SOPs. And, there's communication that you always have to work on. And some people might understand one thing and you're saying another thing. So you always have to make sure you're on the same page. And I can truly admit that we definitely have learned through that. So it's definitely something that you always want to be working on. And communication is the biggest skill that anybody can work on. But, that's definitely how we vet, how we work with people, and what we can expect whenever we work with somebody in our network.
And I think that just goes to show you too, again, why it is so critical for you to just show your work. And even if you don't have any work, it's also just to like go out and fly and
Yeah.
capture and practice and like understand that if someone's looking for a job, like if they're doing it right, they should be asking, can I see some samples of your work, or where can I view what you've done in the past, or just in general, because you never know what they might be really good at. Or someone that is a ground videographer, right, that has all the knowledge of camera settings and composition and format and everything else that you need to do is going to be a hell of a lot better than someone that just flies automated missions all the time
Mhm.
for mapping and surveying is, right? It's like they don't necessarily maybe have that touch on the sticks or the knowing of like the thirds rule and everything else that someone else might as well already know. But it's like, I've never flown a drone, but you could pick it up very easily based
Mhm.
off of your other knowledge. So I think that's smart. It's a great way to do it. And also know that like you got to take chances on people sometimes, but being able to put those processes in place and knowing that there is some standard deliverables and SOPs that you can go forward with, it makes you confident and it makes your pilot a lot more confident too, right? Rather than someone just sending over like, well, here's a couple bullet points and go for it. It's like, okay, well, but you got to put a little bit more effort into it too, potentially to get out what you want and get your clients coming back. So,
Yeah, for
if
sure.
you look at your site now today, like, right, like you are like people can come and purchase a lot of digital assets, right? Like obviously I know drones is just a part of it, right? Like um what, I guess, as far as from where you started to what you are working on today with AirWeb, and like as you go forward into the future, what's kind of the, the goal or the focus with AirWeb Digital as you continue on?
It's definitely changed throughout time, and hindsight's 2020. So earlier when you were talking about the name, I was like, at that time, in 2019, I'm like you said, my first passion now is flying drones. That's the air part. I was building websites, so let's put web in there. And then I'm a nerd. I like technology, so let's put digital. AirWeb Digital was a domain that wasn't taken, so I bought the domain. And now looking at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, like we literally have built something that's utilizing air, drones as a tool, because drones are just a tool that collect data or that apply actual services like drone cleaning and spraying and things of that nature. But a drone is just a
Mhm.
tool, and most of the content lives on the web in a web app experience. If you're talking about VR, AR, that's all web applications. So AirWeb Digital and then digital media. So now all of our deliverables are digital media. So it's like it really works out perfect with what we're delivering now, and looking at it, it's like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. But I had no idea, whenever I was coming up with the name, to be honest. And that's a little comforting for people just wanting to start, because yeah, your name is your name, but you can always change it too. Just get another domain. So what I want people to look at us now for is that one hub of being able to order digital media, and having it the most simplest way is you get what you want, and you don't have to go back and forth and do anything with that data. So like I was mentioning, drones are just tools, but they power a lot more deliverables, and that data is used in that workflow. So if you need a cell tower inspection, then of course we're going to use the right tool for that. It might be a Matterport scan, it might be a ground scan. It just depends on what that client needs. And uh, one thing that you're talking about too is I kind of want to hit on is like, you and I both know this, and I'm sure some of the viewers do as well, but most people don't. We don't need to overcomplicate this. Some of the projects that are being flown it's not cinematography and capturing this really nice action shot with FPV and flying around a bunch of talent. It is literally flying to a construction site and getting panoramas. But what happens is, if you know what to do with that data, and you can use those panoramas for an architecture visualization, for pylon signs, let's call it. We work a lot in the signage industry and for signage manufacturers, and we do their sign surveys. For example, like a Chick-fil-A pylon sign before it goes up, a panorama means a lot more whenever you fly in the future location of that pylon sign at specific heights, because now the client can see, what is our visibility? Are we seeing the highway at 50 feet, 60 feet, 70 feet, 80 feet? Or do we need to ask for a variance and go for a higher sign? So that kind of data, when you know what the purpose of it is, what the end goal is, and if you can really change the way that a company is doing things. For example, these sign manufacturers were using balloon lifts and these trucks that would come and basically put up this balloon at a specific height, and then they would go send a photographer down the street, go snap some photos of it, and then they would throw the sign into this architecture visualization, and we're like, that's great, but you can't get a balloon lift everywhere. Like if there's
Mhm.
vegetation, you can't put a balloon lift under vegetation and get the helium balloon above it. You're blocked by the vegetation. And then you can't get a lift up there, because then you're putting people at risk by going around the vegetation. So lifts and balloon lifts and these kind of expensive equipment were just not available nationwide. And this sign manufacturer is like, hey, we need to do this like on the border of Mexico. Like, like we don't have access to this equipment, and we need to do it on the border of Mexico because we need to see our visibility from the highway. So what we're able to do is fly the drone and get all these different data points, and sometimes drive a car, and just using the right tool for the right job, and then be able to recreate this 3D scene that they can then visualize, and see their signage mock-ups from different perspectives and be able to control it and things like that. So it's like, the drone is just one piece of that. And I say that to say that, like, the capture method does not have to be so difficult to be able to get the right deliverable. Sometimes it could be as simple as creating some panoramas and just capturing them and maybe flying for one battery. But don't overcomplicate it just because we're learning things and as a drone pilot, we know all the different use cases of it, but sometimes the client just needs what they need. And you got to figure
Yeah.
out, what are you doing today? How are you doing that? And how can we do it better with the tools that we have? And a drone is a great tool. It's a flying robot, but sometimes it's as simple as using an iPhone. And an iPhone is a better tool for the job because I can't fly in that area to be able to create a nerf, for example, like 3D scenes and things that we don't need photogrammetry for it, but now we can use radiance fields and be able to process with different data. So there's a lot of different things that, like, we know it as the specialist, but the clients don't need to know it. They just need what they need. And however we're going to get to it, it just depends. And we have to approach that case by case.
And I think it's just asking questions, right? It's asking the right questions and enough of those right questions to understand, like, excuse me, what they actually need, right? It's like, I think so many pilots these days try to upsell clients into everything that they can do for them, when at the end of the day, providing them what might be the simplest option for them is one that is going to allow them to be happy and keep coming back to you. Whereas it's like, all right, if you provided me all this data, you charged me, maybe you made a little bit more off of that one job, right? But it's like, I don't have any use for this, any, like, all of this stuff, or they don't know
Even if
how
it's
to
free,
use it. Yeah,
yeah,
then it's like,
even if it's free, like, I would even, if you're going to give me something extra and you're going to say, hey, I give this to you for free, it still might not be valuable. It's still hurting me
right,
because you didn't give me what I needed. It's like going to a
yeah,
restaurant and ordering food, and then you don't like the plate and you're like, can you, I don't really like this that much. They're like, oh, we'll get you something else. And then they give you a new plate and they give you some more dessert. They're like, oh, the dessert's free. You don't like any of it. And you're like,
yeah,
I didn't want, you just wasted my time. I could have went to another
yeah,
restaurant and got what I wanted. So
yeah,
yeah, more is not good, right? Like,
right,
I'd rather take less. My wife and I got ice cream the other day, and they gave us, spoonful, 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 spoonful. They gave it to me. I'm like, I feel like a pig. Like, I got to eat all of this. I can't waste this ice cream. I feel wasteful if I'm throwing this away. I wish you would have just gave me one scoop, one scoop. I would have paid the same exact amount.
yeah,
And I think most of our clients are the same way, because they just, at the end of the day, they have a problem. And if you don't fix that problem, then it does not matter what you give them.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that's critical. It's just figuring out exactly what that problem is, finding the solution, and getting to that endpoint in the best possible way is the most important, right? At the end of the day, for sure.
Hmm.
Um, and it's funny because going off of your signage part, it's like there's so many ways too. Like, we have a client that used they use the same footage for like six different things on like a
Yeah.
property scan, right? It's like
Yeah.
looking for cracks or looking for traffic monitoring or signage
Wow.
maintenance, or, like, you know what I mean? Like, you can look, knowing what your clients are gonna use it for, or what they could even use it for, right? In the beginning, they didn't know that. It's like they didn't even think of, like, oh, we have all this drone footage of our parking lots, but they never even thought about it from a traffic flow perspective of, like, oh,
Right.
that entrance over there, there's been some accidents, or that over there gets clogged up, or the flow is not correct, or this is slowing us down if it's like a fast food restaurant, right? Like, there's so many cool ways to use the data. So it's
Mhm.
also like, hey, educating them on all the ways of, like, you can use this data for so many different things. If I'm still capturing it, um, why not show that off or give them the ability to do that? So,
Yeah.
no,
Great.
I think it's great, man. I've loved what you built so far, and I think you're doing a lot of great things, helping pilots out get work, and also be on that consultancy side of, like, educating clients on that front of how to use drones and as a tool, but then also knowing, pushing that digital in different creative ways as well throughout the different tools as well. So,
Appreciate it.
what's kind of like on the horizon, or like, are you looking to continuously expand your pilot network, or if anybody's listening out there now that's like, hey, call to action for you, like, what also could people help you with, or tell us, get a little bit of glimpse on that, or what else is, like, what's the future hold for AirWeb Digital?
So I look at it as twofold. I want to continuously grow the network. I want to find more pilots in different areas and different applications. For example, we got a request for whitewashing and spraying this white paint, this white coating over a 100-year-old greenhouse in Washington, D.C. And it's like, that's so bizarre. Like, I didn't even know that was a use case of these kind of spraying drones. So, I went down that rabbit hole and found a couple of people for the job, sent them over the details. We were able to quote out the job. We're waiting on the final green light, and things like that is like, wow, that's amazing. Like, I look at this as, I don't really want to limit AirWeb to one industry. I know that most people say the riches are in the niches, but when you look at drones, I believe that is a niche that goes so horizontal. At the same time, there's a lot of different use cases, but if you become the expert that can utilize a mapping drone to then come in and use a spraying application drone for agriculture, then you're using these two different kind of data sets and this equipment, maybe with two different drone pilots. So definitely expanding the network, seeing different use cases, and at the same time working with other pilots. For example, the signage manufacturers that we're working with, we only have that opportunity because it was a referral from a pilot in my network that knew about the client need, knew a little bit about the current way of what they were doing, and was like, I think there's something here that AirWeb is doing. They're doing these 3D scenes with nerfs. Maybe that could connect. So we went off of that hunch, and it wasn't the right result. It was like what I was saying earlier, it was too complicated for what the client needed. They needed the simple form. It was too complicated. So then we found out what they really needed, and we started working with that client. Now that pilot gets a kickback, and I work with my pilots that way. I mean, I'm always letting them know, like, anything that you send over to us for the next 10 years, or 10 years now, for the next 2 years, you're getting a 10% commission on the top line of any revenue that comes from that client. It's not off of profit, it's off of the top line.
It's great.
So if
Yeah.
we sell something, 6 months down the line, you're getting mailbox money. And I push that out constantly because, whenever you work with a pilot network, it's really interesting because we can learn off of each other. Your service regions over here, my service regions over here, even with pilot networks that I work with, like, their service regions are everywhere. We overlap, but if they don't have people in the area, maybe we can provide some people, or we can provide some guidance on how they can quote out a job. And it's just a synergistic relationship. So I look at it
For
like
sure.
that. There's always opportunities for us to win, and iron sharpens iron, and it's an abundant world out there. There's so much
Yep.
opportunity that whenever you create one new solution to a problem, there's 10 more problems to that solution. Like when the iPhone came out, yeah, the iPhone came out, and that's great. It's a new tool. It's something that we can use. But now there's apps that need to go into the app store, and now there's cases that need to be made, and now there's repair services that need to be made. So there's all these ancillary services that have to come about for the iPhone to even work. And that's the same way with any kind of business relationship. We create a new deliverable for a client, and now they have this new need that they didn't even know that they had because they got better data, and now they can make better decisions. So
Yep.
yeah, it's a big world out there, and I just look forward to working with more people that have that same mindset.
For sure, man. I love it. And anybody that's listened to all the episodes probably has heard me say this. I believe this is the 15th or 16th episode, probably damn near every time, because I agree with it. And it keeps coming up in like all of the podcast episodes. It's like collaboration over competition. And I truly believe it. I truly understand that, like, having relationships with people, and building those relationships, in a meaningful way. You help me, I help you. It doesn't always have to be that way. It can be that way, but you don't have to necessarily expect it to be that way. You're just helping out, and you're learning, and you're growing together then, and pushing each other forward, but pushing the industry forward, as well. So I love that mindset, and I think that's why I've always gravitated towards what you're doing as well. So always appreciate it. And yeah, is there anything else you want to put out there as far as from the industry of what you think the future holds, or just in general? We're at about 45 minutes now, but um, anything else you wanna share?
You want to you want me to tease like future projects and things like that, or kind of
Yeah, sure, we
nerd out
can.
about
Yeah,
kind of stuff? There's some cool stuff that we're working on that, if we can figure it out logistically and get that rolling, I think it'd be a really big impact. So I don't know if you've heard about like the Kia boys and the class action lawsuits for, Hyundais and Kias getting stolen. But,
I saw that.
there's
Yeah,
this big issue. Yeah, big issue. It's happening all over the place. And there's a GPS company, like a GPS tagger that goes for the cars, like so that way you can find like your stolen car. This company is looking at creating a new way of doing things nationwide. So they have a drone dispatch center in 2 cities, and we're working together to be able to leverage our network nationwide and create this nationwide 24/7 drone dispatch center. So when a stolen vehicle is alerted and it's on the move, we can deploy a pilot out there and get that data for or for the police that are going to be arriving. And what that does is, it's when a car is stolen today, it's just personal property. Like there's private property. Like the cops are not going to go on scene immediately, unfortunately. And
Hmm.
that's your car, that's your asset that's just driving down the street, and you don't know where it's at and what can be done to it. So we get those eyes on the vehicle at the time, and then whenever the scene is, let's say they left it at an area or something like that, then we're providing that information to the police as they arrive on scene. So it's a really interesting workflow that if we can get it right and make sure we do all the hoops logistically and jump through all those things, then it's something that's like it can be taken into so many different things. So I see that same workflow like an aerial on-demand network, 24/7 drone dispatch, you could call it, for SNR, that could be leveraged not just from a department point, but also for third-party networks and being able to expand that out because we get those requests often where, so anything from an animal that's roaming around to people, and missing children or missing elderly people from retirement homes. So something that can be tapped into and expanded out just from the 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 resources that we have from the tax level. I mean, that's obviously not enough if not every department is equipped with these kind of tools, right? So it's something that I see is like, all right, so if every department doesn't have these tools, then what can we do in the meantime until they do get these tools? And then even if they have them, sometimes not everybody's trained to even use them the right way. So for search and rescue, like there's specific crosshatch patterns that you need to know about and specific flight patterns that you need to know about, and working with a ground recon team that is just very specific to that use case. But if you're not learning that and applying it, then it's not really useful to have that data in the sky because you might miss an area ultimately, and that's a life, So
Yeah.
I'm looking at things like that I think can really make a big impact, and being able to leverage our network in those kinds of ways is interesting.
It's fantastic. I think, yeah, solving those complex problems that by using other tools and other technology, putting it together with drone tech is the future for sure. A lot of ways, and so I'll be following along with that. I think that's a cool way to get some of these vehicles and these other people and stuff back safe to their owner or to the safety in a lot of spots because I know some states,
Mhm.
even like Wisconsin have networks of like volunteers of like for search and rescue and things like that and
Mhm.
certain networks, but they're not really using any tech, right? Or
No,
like to disable or to deploy them and to make it like rapid and
yeah,
there's no real good system with it. So I think it's a great idea and I hope it succeeds, right? But that's just in general the drone industry. I feel like that we're in and continuously going is like finding new ways to use them all the time. Like just
right.
the crazy applications and thoughts that you can't really even think of all of them. You learn a new way to do it almost every week. I feel like so.
Mhm.
Just kind of being creative and staying out there. And if there's a problem out there, just get creative. Find a solution with some technology and drones, and I'm sure there's someone else out there that you could probably learn from as well.
Yeah, it's something every day in this industry for sure. So
Yep.
you're not going to get tired of it. I mean, there's always something coming out related to what a drone can be used for. It's just nobody wants to become a hammer specialist. Like you want to become a carpenter and you want to understand how to use hammers and other tools. So it's like if you can know, okay, I can fly this thing and I can fly around a swamp with all this vegetation and be able to do it in a way. For example, we did a really cool project and can't give too many specifics on it, but in a sense, we built a catalog of 3D assets and 3D scenes. So these scenes are created from not from photogrammetry, but they're radiance fields. And in a simple form, it's just a simpler way of creating a 3D scene that requires less input than photogrammetry, and it can create more complex scenes than photogrammetry. So reflections don't work well with photogrammetry, whereas Nerf and Gaussian splats, which are radiance fields, they work great. And if you can get it right, then you can recreate a scene of a swamp, for example, really nice. But you can't do it from flying nadir and just looking straight down. You actually have to drop down and fly in like a specific orbital pattern, like right above the water a few feet, and you do it 3 different times. And that's a very manual flight. But if you can get into the area and capture that kind of data, whereas somebody can't do that on a boat, or even if they had a DSLR camera, they knew how to use it, but they can't get access to that, then you can merge the data capture side and the processing side, and you can create something that not that many people can create. So it's just really understanding how drones and their input work with a lot of different things, and you basically create a tech stack off of that. It's the same sense of building software.
Yep. Yeah, I know how that goes. We're
Yeah, you got
going through that right now, man. It's
yeah.
there's a whole set of complex problems and challenges, but it's fantastic, and you're solving a problem that not many people can or are willing to do or putting out there. So Marvin, I really appreciate you being on today. If anyone wants to reach out to you or learn more about what you're doing, what's the best way for them to contact you? I know you're pretty active on social media and LinkedIn and that, but what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
So if you have any questions of AirWeb and things on the B2B side and how we can help you out, then my personal email, you can always email me at marvin@airwebdigital.com, MarvinAirWebDigital. Then you can head over to our website, of course. But on the personal side, if you just want to keep up with what I'm doing or also what AirWeb is doing as well, then you can find me at Marvin Rosario on LinkedIn, and Instagram is pretty much where I'm most active.
Love it. All right. Well, we'll put all those links in the show notes for anybody that wants to reach out to Marvin and keep tabs on what he's up to. And I hope to catch up with you again soon here, Marvin. And thanks again for being on. It was a blast learning about you and your story.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity, Cody. Look forward to the next one.
Absolutely, you bet. Yep, no problem. And anybody else that's listening, we appreciate any comments, likes, shares, anything you can to help us promote the podcast. Or if you know of anybody else that wants to be on it, we're getting better at this, or I'm getting better at this as well, to try to ask, for referrals of some amazing people in the industry, have more guests on like Marvin. We appreciate it. So we'll see you in the next episode. Happy flying.